Thank you, Bill and Sunny. We are talking It's a Wonderful Life a little bit this month. It's one of my favorite movies. I rarely cry at movies, but It's a Wonderful Life, I'll tell you after if you want to know, has 5 cry points for me. A real too hanky film. And if you really pay attention in the movie, there's this one scene where George Bailey, the main character, is in his dad's office at the building and loan. And there's a picture of his dad, and underneath there's a little saying. And the saying goes, "All that you can take with you is that which you've given away." All that you can take with you is that which you've given away. Is that true? It resonates with me, first of all, pragmatically, in the message of when you die, you can't take your stuff with you. So why do we get so attached to our stuff? Even after we die, it might have our name on it, but it's going to wind up, your grandkid's going to turn into an ashtray or whatever, and there's nothing to do about it. So we can't take our stuff with us, but we can leave a legacy, right? Hopefully a legacy of good deeds, of kindness, of listening, of connections, of love. When I think about my friend Madeline, wow, she's a giant figure to me because of all that she gave to so many around us. And thinking more deeply about the statement, all that I can take with me is that which I've given away, I kind of like this mythology that when I die, if I go on, I may remember my name, and I may even recall my form in this life, but perhaps more than anything else, I will become the good that I've done. Nothing more, nothing less than that love that I was able to discover and cultivate, how I was able to be a blessing to others, how I was able to celebrate and be at one with the sacredness that is in life. I like the idea, perhaps, that when we go, that's really all that we are. So much better a reason to spend our days living from a sense of the sacred and living in charity and in goodness. I like the quote in the movie, too, because it's kind of ironic that this is a statement that's made in a bank. Wouldn't it be cool if you walked into Wells Fargo and there was a big sign that says, "All that you can take with you is that which you've given away." It's kind of like if you walked into the church here and there was a big sign that said, "True sanctuary is at the beach." Flip-flops and sunscreen for everybody, although it's a little cold out there today. And it'd be a true statement, although we still love coming here. Or, it's like going into Burger King and then having a sign that says McDonald's fries are better. Or purchasing something from Whole Foods and it has stickers on it that says costs more here than anywhere else. Or walking into Taco Bell and seeing a big sign that says, "What are you thinking?" No offense to Taco Bell. Jan says, the Locos Tacos, is that what you like? Absolutely. Okay, so we do have Taco Bell defenders here in the room. It's a powerful statement. Now, the quote, "All that you can take with you is that which you've given away," can actually be traced back to a Catholic mystic by the name of Brother Lawrence. And Brother Lawrence taught that God is not some far-off being, but that God is something that is nearer to you than your very breath. That God is always closer to you than you know. And Brother Lawrence talked about practicing the presence of God. He encouraged us to practice the presence of God. And how do we do that? What is that? It's charity. It's goodwill towards men and women. It's living from a sense of sacredness and practicing love in our lives. When we practice those things, we practice the presence of God, and it doesn't bring God closer to us because God can't get any closer. But it does help bring us closer to God, and as a byproduct of that, closer to our true and real selves. Brother Lawrence would say, "Let us think often that our only business in this life is to please God. Perhaps all besides is but folly and vanity." I don't know about you, but I've been practicing a lot of folly and vanity lately. Because it's so easy to forget and stop living in accordance with goodwill and love and charity, and to get caught up in all of the to-dos, all of the dramas, all of the stresses. And I don't know about you, but looking back over my life, I've wasted a lot of time not focused on practicing the presence of goodness and love in my life. And I thought those things mattered at the time, but they don't. Do you relate with that? Can you look back at that time that you wasted in the argument with so-and-so, or worried about such and such? And I don't mean to take away the importance from those things, but in the end, do they really matter? Is it not that honoring of the love and connection with the people we care about most that's most important? Is it not a recognition of a sacred something out there that is in us too, and celebrating that really matters and is really the sum total of the meaning of our lives? I think too many of us in our lives have been taught incorrectly or fall into the model that the purpose of life is to make something of ourselves. To become a somebody. What are you going to be when you grow up, Josh? I don't know, but I'm going to be somebody. And I don't think that that's what life's about. I say that from a place of being an individualist. I believe in recognizing, acknowledging your potential, and achieving it to the highest degree that you can. All that being said, I don't believe the purpose of my life is to be a somebody in the world's image of what a somebody is supposed to be. I think that the purpose of life is to help others be the somebodies that they really are. I think the purpose of life is to make and support life in being what it can be, because God knows, we all know there are times where it doesn't quite measure up to that. But that's part of the call to us, I think, and the purpose of a meaningful and wonderful life is to be able to focus in on living for a cause that's greater than ourselves, for connections that are greater than who we are when we're singular, if that's a word. One of you will tell me after service, Michelle. If we're living in accordance with the meaning of life, or just trying to carve out what we think ought to be in our lives. And that's George Bailey's dilemma in It's a Wonderful Life, right? He has all these plans, all these dreams, all these desires, and then he has the life before him. And because he doesn't get what he thinks he wants, he thinks his life lacks value and meaning and purpose. He's too busy plotting the life he planned to accept the life that is waiting for him, that contains the message and the value that he's seeking. Has anyone else lived like that before in their lives? I think of Louisa May Alcott's famous words, "Far away there in the sunshine are my highest aspirations. I may never reach them, but I can look up and see their beauty, believe in them, and try to follow where they lead." So George's dilemma is he wants to travel to Europe, right? But he's unable to because his father passes away. And then he wants to go to college, but he's unable to because he has to take over the building and loan. He sends his brother to school, and he's supposed to go to school when his brother comes back, but he doesn't because his brother's met a wife, and they've gotten married, and he's got this new great job. So he continues to make these sacrifices. And in his unconscious, in his background, he's thinking that he's less and less of a person, less and less of who he wants to be. But in reality, what has he been doing? Blessing the lives of everyone around him, creating lives, creating newness. I don't know about you, but I've always wanted the life that I've wanted for myself. But it's not until I'm willing to surrender it sometimes that I can realize something even beyond what I could have imagined has taken place around me. That's one of those great challenges in life sometimes, to figure out how do we balance what we want and getting what we want with what we need and what is available for us if we give in to living for a cause and living for others beyond our own self-interest. David Brooks is a famous New York Times columnist, a conservative columnist who Democrats seem to like and conservatives seem to don't like. I've never quite understood that. But he's an interesting guy, and he once wrote that there's this great battle in American society between Jack Kerouac's On the Road and the movie Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. I don't completely agree with him, but it's interesting to think about. He says, there's a core American debate between on the road and It's a Wonderful Life. On the road suggests that happiness is to be found through freedom, wandering, and autonomy. It's a Wonderful Life suggests that happiness is found in the lifelong attachments that precede choice. It suggests that restraints can actually be blessings because they lead to connections that are deeper than temporary self-interest. The happiness research suggests that It's a Wonderful Life is correct and On the Road is an illusion. What do you think? It's an interesting thing to think about, and how do we merge those two lives together? But I know that there is perhaps nothing worse in life than missing out on the good. Missing out on the fun. I used to have that with my older brothers and sisters. They would get to go out, and I would have to stay home, and I'd have that feeling of missing out on the fun. And as I've grown older, it's turned into more of missing out on the good. I don't want to miss out on seeing the blessings of my life as they're taking place. I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to make a connection with someone when it's there. I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to give thanks and live in gratitude and not get caught up in BS about some other thing going on in the world or in my life. I don't want to miss out on that blessing of life. And that's where self-interest can steer us wrong. We get so caught up in ourselves that we miss out on the real picture of what's going on around us. I wanted to think of someone that was a great example to me today of not just selfless living, but of living grandiosely, of really being a great person that really embodied this idea of that which you can take with you is only that which you've given away. And not only did Madeline Fielding, who we brought up earlier and we're honoring this morning, but I also thought of Frida Wright, who's a wonderful practitioner who's been a part of our church for 30 years that made her transition last month. And so many of us love Frida so much. She would turn 90 years old this upcoming Thursday. And to me, she really was one of the greatest people I knew. And she was really one of the greatest people I knew because, not of her, again, just being selfless, but because of her virtues and her morals and how she lived them. She wasn't famous. She wasn't rich as far as I know. She wasn't someone that would demand your attention the moment she walked into the room. But she was so strong. If you got to know her, she would become incredibly interested in you and follow your path. She was a great listener. She would never BS you about anything. You always knew where she stood, and she did not hesitate to let you know if she did not like something that you were doing. She lived her life, most of her life, as a single mom. She was a nurse. She was a teacher of nurses. She was a volunteer, and she was a practitioner at this church. So she lived in service to something greater than she was and helped bring so many together. And to talk a little bit more about her, I wanted to find someone that knew Frida longer than I had. And she has a good friend in this church named Janice Guevara, one of our practitioners, and they've known each other for over 30 years. And I invited Janice to come up and share a little bit about how Frida embodies our maxim of the morning. Thank you, Janice.
I was about 23 years old when I first met Frida. We were both volunteering at a homeless family shelter in Long Beach. I had just graduated from college and was volunteering there on my own, and Frida was there volunteering with a women's service club that she was part of called Altrusa. Whenever the Altrusans were at the shelter, the place was full of joy. They were constantly giggling. And I remember that the shelter was an old former hospital, and it was always in need of repair and fixing. And the Altrusa team, and including Frida, they were just this giggling herd that would come and do whatever needed to be done, painting, cleaning, hanging pictures. And I have one really clear memory of someone had donated a commercial size freezer to the shelter, which was great. But they delivered it to the very back end of the hospital, and we needed it in the kitchen, which was, way over there. And Frida and about 8 other Altrusans, they got around this freezer, and they moved it. inch by inch, and they giggled the entire way. They moved it to the other side of the facility. And I felt so comfortable with these ladies that I approached Frida and I asked her if I could join their club. And she was so excited. She introduced me to everyone and just kind of adopted me. And that was 30 years ago. And we were friends ever since. I have many fond memories of Frida. She threw me a surprise wedding shower. She helped me during my pregnancies and answered just all of my relentless questions that I had. And we would just talk for hours on whatever was on our minds. Frida's friendship was a treasured and precious gift, and it was Frida that brought me to this church. But I am only one of many people that were loved and loved Frida. She was a completely devoted mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. She loved her home and her neighborhood. Her neighbors became her family. And Frida, as Josh mentioned, truly understood the power of giving to causes greater than oneself. In addition to her charity work through the Altrusa Club, Frida's charity work included several literacy programs, student support service programs. Recently, she was part of a group called iSanctuary. They are a nonprofit organization focused on empowering survivors of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. They provided educational assistance, counseling, mentoring, and skill training. Frida also enjoyed a truly distinguished nursing career. In fact, she continued to teach at Long Beach City College until about 3 years ago. When Frida was in the hospital and I would visit her, I would just love to listen to her take control of her medical team. And she would question them and they would listen, and it was so amazing. She was a lifelong learner. She usually had a novel or two in her purse that she was working on. She was a world traveler, and I loved to listen to her tell stories about her trips. And what was most important to her was truly connecting with the cultures and getting to know people and where they were coming from their perspectives. And Frida, of course, truly loved this church. She was a wonderful practitioner, guide, and mentor to us all. When Josh asked me if I could say a few words to honor Frida, I had mixed feelings. I, of course, wanted to share my love for my good friend, but I was also nervous that, would I be able to adequately describe her wonderful qualities, because she had so many. She was insightful, reliable, resourceful, generous, but I think the quality that I loved most about Frida was her compassion. When Frida listened to you, she was fully engaged. She did her very best to make sure she had a true connection and that she understood what you wanted to say. And I look around this room and I know that there are many people here who, like me, were loved and loved Frida, and that I am not alone in the sadness of her transition. But our philosophy teaches us that God knows only eternal life, continuous and forever expanding. And whatever sadness any of us might be feeling, it is no match for God's divine, eternal reality. I am very grateful to know the truth of this eternal nature, our oneness with God, and the solid knowing that God is all there is. I am so very grateful for my friendship with Frida, and the comfort in knowing that she is held in our hearts and in the divine Creator here and now. And so it is.
Thank you, Janice. You said it very well, especially in this small amount of time given. I really appreciate it. Something I loved about Frida as well is, all our practitioners, they get up here and share, sometimes no matter what is going on in their lives. And in the last several years, Frida was a great example of living gracefully through pain. She was in a lot of physical pain, so that for many of us, it wasn't that hard to let her go because she was ready to let go of a body that was no longer cooperating with her. But she would get up here, and she didn't try to live gracefully through pain by pretending she wasn't in it. You could sit down and she would tell you all about it. She was very mindful of it. But one of my favorite things when Frida got up here, and it fits into our message today as well, is she spoke the day before the leap year day. And she talked about the preciousness of having an extra day from God, to love each other, to be mindful of God, to, as we've been talking about, practice the presence of God. And with her passing, it's a reminder of the special days that we have, that each day is a special day. She shared a quote from Marjorie Holmes' prayer just for today. "Oh God, give me the grace for this day, not for a lifetime, not for next week, nor for tomorrow, just for this day. Direct my thoughts and bless them. Direct my work and bless it. Direct the things I say and give them blessing too. Direct and bless everything that I think and speak and do, so that for this one day, just this one day, I have the gift of grace that comes from your presence." Frida would go on to share, "I use my gift of prayer to give thanks for every season and each day, the various periods of the day, morning, noon, afternoon, evening, and night. Let us see that each has its own unique light, God's light, so that each shade of light affects us differently. So at this time, let us pause and give thanks for each day that God has made for us, and a special thanks to tomorrow, that extra day that we can use to love a little bit more." A great message to seize the day. And it's a reminder as well that for some of us, we never quite get to practicing this spiritual stuff because we're waiting for our lives to get better. Well, when I'm happier, then I'll start celebrating this stuff. Or when this changes, then I'll start practicing this stuff. And Frida's words are a strong reminder to me that it's often, even in the darkest places, that we are called to be a presence and a light in our lives. That I know that even during this Christmas season, we are remiss if we don't think about the people that are suffering in the world, or acknowledge the people that we love that are having a difficult time, or we try to be in denial about our own fears and concerns and worries. But the message of living for today is that the light comes uniquely, mind you, but it is in every situation if we're really willing to bring it. One of the best things I watched this past year, and I'll close with this, was an HBO documentary on James Foley, who was the gentleman who was killed by ISIS on video. A really tragic thing that happened a couple years ago where I stopped and looked and said, I do not see God in this situation, right? It made me angry and upset, and it was disgusting what they did to this great young man who was a journalist who decided his response to seeing the pain to the world would go out to the Middle East and try to report on them for other people. And he went there once and got kidnapped and was actually released. And against everyone's best wishes, he went back to Syria, where knowing what could take place to him, and he did. He was captured, and he lived with other prisoners of war. And what would happen is, as many of you know, in America, we have a policy where we don't negotiate with other countries, or we're not supposed to get people back. And so there'd be all sorts of prisoners of war moving from different countries that would be with James for a while and move back. And they all shared these amazing stories about what a mentor he was to them, how supportive of them that he was, what a light he was even in these dark circumstances. And there was one particular story of a soldier that shared that on one Christmas morning in their dark cells with nothing, hardly even clothes on their bodies, they all decided to sit in a circle, all these men from different nations and backgrounds together, sit in a circle, and each person as a Christmas gift would share a compliment about the man who was sitting next to him. They'd share something that they admired. And one of these young men who survived, and of course James was murdered, so he didn't get to share. He shared that it was the best Christmas that he had ever had. And it's kind of a powerful message to us that even in the darkest places, because we are there, because we are aware, a light can shine. It's not our job to shine the light. It's just ours to open ourselves up that little bit to allow that light to come in. So let us be thankful for our loved ones who have brought us so much light in our lives, and honor them by being open to continue to express this light for ourselves and for this life that we love. So thank you for your time, everyone, this morning. Thanks for being here. Thanks again to Jen.